Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
Okay, awesome. Well, hey, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It. This has been a long time coming, and so really appreciate you and your time. Please just tell us a little bit about your background, where and how you found success as you define it. And please include something, interesting about you most people wouldn't know.
Awesome. Well, Doug, thanks for having me. I'm super happy to be here. Obviously, we work together, and it's been a long time in the making here. So, I'm just excited to get started here. And I'm trying to think, how best to kind of answer. But I guess at first, I'm a husband, a father, technologist by day, real estate investor by night, father 24/7, 365. We were just talking before, nonstop. And we were just chatting before we hit record. I have 2 sick kiddos at home right now, one of whom may just barge in at any point in time, but it is what it is. So I spend most of my time on the west coast of the United States right now, originally born and raised in Switzerland, where I started my, young life as a farmer. My parents are not farmers, but this kid I knew from school basically was a farmer, son of farmers, and I just ended up hanging out with him a whole lot. And it turns into, well, you're old enough to, shovel cow dung, right? You're old enough to pick up a broom. You're old enough to, eventually drive a tractor and all of that. After I moved on from that, decided to get into skiing because I did grow up in the Swiss Alps. So became a ski instructor, lived off of that for a few years. That was obviously part-time winter seasons. And then I just went into, filling my summers with basically, playing with technology. I always loved technology. My mother worked at a technology company in the early technology days. So she brought home computers and stuff like that. And that's just how it got me started. And,
cool.
And my interest in technology just got me to, tinkering, playing with stuff, and then getting my first few jobs in the technology space, during the summers while I was not skiing, basically. I was successfully able to, build different, logistical or, let's say conference management, tools and platforms for this company that, or this organization, I should say, that basically organized nature conservation events across the world. So I was able to travel with them, to those various events. So I was very fortunate to be able to
And approximately what age were you at this point? Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. I was probably 15 or 16 when I kind of transitioned from farming, which obviously I was in school. It's not like I was a farmer full time, but I would start my day going to the farm from 6 to 8, then school, then farm again from 4 to 8 or whatever. I think I turned to the kind of the technology piece and skiing piece in my teenage years, so 15, 16, something like that.
And all of it's good for you and builds character. I do, and what I wanted to say is, farmers more often than not have an incredibly strong work ethic. They have to survive, right?
100%.
And what an amazing, youth that you get to do this traveling with these companies, and that had to be a blast. This stuff was taking off for you really fast.
Yeah, and honestly, my goal was to travel to these conferences, or actually I should rephrase that. My goal was to go to these countries. So I went to beautiful places like Thailand, South Africa, Costa Rica, kind of all over. So that was my goal. And what I ended up doing is going to talk to the people that were setting up these events and just ask them, what do I need to do to get a free ride to the event? And that started with, we're not big on technology here. We need a conference management, for all things, so the logistics, sessions, food, venue, all of that. And they're like, if you could do something for us that we can use to manage these events, then you're on board. We'll need you out there. So if you can build something, build it, and then you'll have a free ticket to go. And at that point in time, I didn't know much about those pieces of technologies, but I took a weekend and I just dove deep and was like, went back on the following Monday and said, I think I can do this, so let's give it a shot. And that just got, that was when I bit got bit by the technology bug, I guess, which then led to me going back to school, getting, undergraduate degree, then decided to move on, get a graduate education, which moved me basically from Switzerland to New York. And at the end of my graduate education is when I met a couple Harvard PhDs in construction and architecture that were looking to start a company in the technology space for the construction industry, essentially. And I joined them, and we were very fortunate to build a successful startup and company and have a great exit. And that's since then I've been in technology kind of ever since, basically. And over the last few years, I guess, we've also started seeing quite a bit of success in real estate. So we invest in real estate, part-time, I guess, still today, and that's working out well for us.
Yes, and so I think, well, thank you so much, and that's awesome. I wanted to touch on skiing. You were a ski instructor. I grew up doing some skiing. I lived close to Lake Tahoe, and
I love Lake Tahoe.
I'm sorry.
I love Lake Tahoe. We go up there a lot.
Me too. Like, one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was like moving from Lake Tahoe. I lived there for a year, and but ski instructors, that was kind of like one of these things that I always looked up to them, and I always wanted to be one. In the 80s, they made movies about them and that kind of thing, and I did a decent amount of skiing and got into snowboarding, and it's just a lot of fun.
So you went to the dark side. You went to snowboarding.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And I know there's always like conflict, right, between the two.
Always, still today.
Yeah, we had a roommate who was a skier. One roommate was a skier, and then there was 5 others of us that were all snowboarders, and we would razz each other all the time. I also wanted to kind of, right now is a perfect time to talk a little bit about Undoor.
Sure. So Undoor is basically this company of ours that kind of started, and when I say ours, it's really my wife and I, right? We have some additional help for, a lot of the tasks that are involved in kind of running a real estate investment company, but it started organically, essentially. And what happened was we started investing in real estate for ourselves, like a lot of people do. We invest remotely from where we are located. And then just, organically, by just being passionate about this space and talking about this space a whole lot, just started with friends and family and coworkers and neighbors and all that stuff. And just like those conversations grew and grew and grew. And essentially what it took us to a point where, we were spending quite a bit of time just helping other people get started, right? So we're by no means, experts in all things real estate, right? We've been doing this for, I want to say 5 years now, something like that. But we know some, right? We do it quite a bit. We're passionate about it. So we just ended up kind of helping people get started. And now essentially what we do is not only is it kind of like our real estate investment, company for ourselves, but then there's kind of like this educational aspect, coaching aspect, whatever you want to call it, to it, where we just help people that are looking for help, that want to get started, and we just kind of offer help that way. So that's what that is.
Yeah, it's so overwhelming for anybody, I think, as you're getting started looking into real estate, like, where do we start? And most people will start
100%.
with SFR, right? But there's just so much information, they don't know where to start. So having a coach is like a super valuable asset. And I think, it's one way that you can get from point A to point B much quicker than you could otherwise, right?
Alone, 100% agreed. Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do, really, is just, provide. I'm always scared to say shortcuts because then people interpret it as kind of the easy way, to get to the point, but it's not really a shortcut. It's like, instead of taking the stairs, maybe you take the elevator, right? Or instead of taking a ladder, you take the stairs, whatever the best analogy is, but it's really just kind of giving that little boost of, help for people to get started. Right. And that's what we're trying to do, basically.
I love it. And it's super valuable, super important. So that's awesome. Great. Love it. Now, let me ask you this. Please share with us one or more of your favorite successes that you either solely created or you were a part of.
Yeah, I think I kind of alluded to them or touched on them, but, as a big one is obviously just being a parent and having, a wonderful, wife and family. And that's a large part of our lives now. I love kids. I love being a parent. So that, I'd consider a big success for us and myself. There's, obviously, I don't know what the exact statistic is, but it's like 1 in 10, technology startups end up actually being successful. We were lucky to be part of that, 10% there. So that's pretty successful. Obviously, I did not do that alone, right? We had a very solid team, a very solid group of founders and whatnot. So that was great. And then honestly, I think just generally a success for me is just generally being and genuinely being happy with where I'm at in my life, right? I love what I do on the W-2 front. I love what we do on the real estate front. And we're just seeing, growth, just looking at our goals, tracking, things that are important to us. We are seeing progress. We are seeing growth. So I think ultimately that just translates to feeling and being successful, really.
Yeah, and also you touched on something sort of like enjoying the process and making happiness a part of it, but really like enjoying life. I think is a great starting point also for really anybody. If we kind of just decide at some point that we are going to begin to enjoy our lives like right where we're at and be grateful for all the things that we have. And you can start to move into this mindset that is like, I am actually super well off, no matter where you're at, right? And
100%.
If you're continually like, I could do more, I could do better, I'm not going to be happy till I get there, then you'll never be happy. You have to kind of decide at some point, right? But
yeah, that's very much I think how my mindset was, years ago, was like, well, this will happen later. This will happen when I'm an adult. This will happen when I make more money. This will happen when my kids are older. This will happen when, I retire or I have more time or whatever. And it kind of always pushes that, pushes the buck further. And you're always kind of floating through life, waiting for those things to happen, but they keep that goalpost keeps moving, right? So definitely shifted my mindset to just be very happy and content, right, with the today, right, and enjoying every minute of today, right? And for me, honestly, a lot of that changed when we had kids, I think. I heard, I can't remember where I read this or heard this, but it's something like, you spend 80% of all the time you're going to spend with your children is between the ages of 0 and like 12 or something like that, or 14, right? And then after that, because school, camps, friends, they move out as adults or whatever, you don't get to see them anymore. Like that just, flipped a switch for me. I was like, wow, okay, so I better start enjoying things now, because this 80% is going to be gone real fast, right? So,
No, that's a huge point, and it's a great reminder to stop and smell the roses for one thing. Like in other words, when you're walking past your kid and they have something to show you, like really make sure they're appreciated, really enjoy that moment. And the other thing I was going to say is when you were talking about, I'll do this later when my kids are older, when I hit this milestone, so on and so forth. What we're actually doing right there, and I mean, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, this is sort of my thought on it, is that we are neglecting ourselves because our self says, I want to go do this. Whereas like in our youth, or, teens and early 20s, we have more independence or whatever. We want to go watch a band play on Friday. We just found out about them. We just go do it. If it's something we really want to do, then find a way. And a lot of these things, we can actually do it now. Like, I want to get a duplex. Okay, then let's start looking. Let's not put this
100%.
off, and start taking action.
Yeah, it's easier than ever, just with, technology tools, access to pretty much anything globally, right? Any content, any educational content, any resource, any tool, any property, right? Any, side gig, right? You could pretty much do anything these days. So there are no more excuses, really.
Yeah, remote work, location independence. Yeah. I mean, the list goes on.
100%.
I love it. Let me ask you this. What would you say is one of the most valuable lessons that you learned from, defining success for yourself and being involved in success?
I think you touched on it earlier. For me, I think a lot of it comes from my, very young years and early days, just, working on the farm, right? Which really, I mean, basically what you said, right? It just brings out like this sense of, valuing hard work, right? And hard work doesn't mean, wasteful work, grinding, killing yourself or anything like that. But it just means, consistently being focused and dedicated to, moving the needle just a tad and working and doing, working on what's important at any given point in time. So really kind of that, in my case, it's obviously, manual labor, but that, the value of hard work and manual labor just still is with me and stuck with me, will stick with me forever, right? Because just, I'm not afraid of work. And when I set my mind to something, then you work hard to get there. Right? It's just you don't sit back and coast, basically. You don't let things happen for you. You work hard to get there.
Yeah, and you don't.
And so that was the case for, starting a technology company, right? When you have 3 people in a, crappy New York office because you have no money, to successful exit, to working on a farm, to working in harsh, nature environments as a ski instructor when it's negative, 25, and you got to keep your customers happy and smiling, right? Who are learning how to not fall and break a leg, right? So yeah, it's just a lot of hard work.
Or hit a tree, like smacking
or
a
hit
tree.
A tree.
Yeah. Get
That's
lost
happened,
in the woods.
Yeah.
So it's you touched on something twice, and I wanted to ask you because this is important. I think a lot of people start businesses, even if it's a real estate, investing business, without actually considering exiting until it's like, oh, I need to get out of this. Is that something that you 3 were looking at from the beginning, planning the exit, or about what point? And do you have any tips for when someone should be planning an exit with a business, and any tips there?
So that's a great question. I don't know that I could say we started the journey while planning the exit. I think it was more about starting the journey while continuously considering all options, right? So what if we don't like this? How would we pivot out, right? What if it's not working for us financially? How would we pivot out or exit, right? If it is successful and it works, how far would we take it, right? What limits do we want to set ourselves and whatnot? So it's more, I guess, thinking that way than really going in and say, here are the 12 milestones till we exit, and here's how we're going to exit, right? If that makes sense.
It does. And, I think that's why, okay, so I think, there's kind of a fine line between shiny object syndrome and exploring your options. But I think it's always good to explore your options and then maybe be really, wise about which ones you take action on. And more so often than not, we're going to be saying no to stuff, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where, kind of focus and consistency, dedication come back into play here. It's like, yeah, shiny object syndrome, of course. But it's like, one's got to, we have to give ourselves a chance to make progress and see, progress and reach, whatever milestones we define in any one of those, let's say, tracks or whatever, before you decide to move on to, shiny object syndrome, right? So we try something, you try for long enough and a meaningful enough amount of time to have an informed opinion on, should we pivot, should we exit, should we, stop, right? So
ideally build that bridge, sort of like Brandon Turner says, into, Fantasy Island or whatever he calls it, but make that business successful before you start another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, well, great. Thank you. Yeah, let me ask you this. Would you mind telling us, one or more of, some of the most incredibly difficult experiences or experience that you've walked through and what you learned from that?
Sure. I don't know how I'm going to do this without getting too emotional, I guess. But so 3 years ago, we had our second child, who was born prematurely. We almost lost my wife in childbirth. After being born prematurely, our daughter had essentially a food aversion for her entire first year of life. So we pretty much had to force feed her for an entire year before she became a bit more independent. And, when I tell this story, I always, I don't know, I was going to say, I like to say, it's not that I like to say this, but I just, when I think about that time in our lives, I think as an adult, I cried more that 1 year of life than my entire adulthood, right? And everything was just terribly hard for everyone, for our, 2-year-old son at the time, for obviously my wife, for myself and all of that. And all of this was happening as we were going into, the unknowns of a global pandemic and then shut down, stay at home and all of that. And at the same time, on the W-2 front, we were going through major, reorganizations, new management, a lot of changes that were happening there, and just, generally exhausted. And I think, that point in time is also what helped us, really understand that, we can't control everything in life, that life is, short, and that we better make the best of it, right? And that, if we can make it through this very, very hard, challenging and trying time as, humans, as a family and whatnot, that we will be able to go through anything, essentially. And that's basically what was the catalyst, I think, for us, going just even bigger into real estate and, starting our company and just acquiring more properties and all of that. So, great ending, I guess. That's really what kind of helped and pushed us. But yeah, that was probably the most difficult kind of time in my life.
Super scary, stressful.
Oh yeah.
And
oh yeah.
You mentioned earlier that, so, it seems like you're very family focused, which I appreciate because I am. And it seems also like through that experience, you kind of experienced unity and maybe greater understanding of. So for me, I have a rule, I define success as long as we have each other, my wife and my kids,
yeah.
that I'm successful. I don't need anything else. Everything else is
same here.
Yeah. And so I think that's one of those things that sounds like that kind of became even more so, important to you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's that clear. plus making sure that we are together, yes, but that we are together, happy and focused on what's important in life, and not the details, not the unimportant stuff, not the material stuff, right? Not the next big house or car or iPhone or whatever, but just focus on, the relationships and the experiences that we have together.
Yeah. I mean, that's powerful, because when you're with your family, for me, I'm on the same way. And what I'm hearing you say is when you're together, you're focused on each other, you are loving, you're giving, you're expressing generosity, and it's about that. So things like the dishes that they pile up for me, and the kids want my attention, or we're together, then I need to not, sort of take that stress and then, I need to just focus.
Couldn't relate more. Yeah, 100%.
I wish I could put it into better
Especially
words.
The dirty dishes. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love it. Awesome. Okay, great. Let me just go ahead and shift the conversation a little bit now. I want to ask you this, and I love this question. And for you, you had some pretty exciting times when you were about age 18. But if you're to be sent back into 18, knowing what you know now, how would you fast track success again, as you define it? What would you tell yourself, or what would you do?
Yeah, I think the big one for me would probably be just saving more and investing sooner. So to fast track kind of the financial aspects of success that then help you kind of unlock all other aspects of success. And I say this for me because I've been fortunate that, I've essentially worked, and I think my first paycheck, I was 8 years old or 7 years old or whatever. Obviously it was $30 a month or whatever it was working on the farm, but it was my first paycheck. And there are not a lot of kids, that you go to school with at, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old that get $30 a month or $50 a month. So that's relevant simply because I've always been in a fortunate situation where I worked to earn, an income that I could then choose to spend however I wanted. And it's not that I was wasteful with the that income and the money. It's just that I didn't necessarily feel the obligation or frankly understand at that age kind of how much eventually I would gain from just starting to save sooner and starting to invest sooner. So really just like that, obviously compounding, aspect of saving and investing early, right? So instead of just kind of spending all of my money because I could and I had money and not a lot of other kids my age did, right? I would have been smarter if I had saved a bit more and invested. So I think I would do that. And then the other one is I think I would have tried to get on the property ladder sooner, and do like a house hack type setup to kind of launch myself into success and wealth and whatnot. Because I guess it was hard as well because I was just traveling all the time and bouncing around all the time between skiing, traveling for work and stuff like that. But there are ways to make it work. And I understand that now. I didn't back then.
Yeah. It's kind of cool about your story is you started working like, 768, right around there. You started earning money about 10 years approximately before the average Joe. And so, our relationship with money, it's trial and error. And not only that, 100%. But education and implementing like the richest man in Babylon, like these, concepts that we can learn from books or other people. You got an early start, whereas, let's say if you started working at 18, then a lot of kids are blowing their money until they're about, 23, 24, start figuring it out. But I think you definitely, it's good to blow some of your money and very good to save and very good to invest aggressively.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. Great advice. Okay, cool. Yeah, let me ask you this question. What are your thoughts on, mindset, and, how to go from a non-success mindset or a scarcity mindset to a success or an abundance mindset?
I think it's one of those things. It's very easy to say those words. It's much harder to actually do it. Right. I think what helped me the most, but I think it's maybe what helps, springboard, launch you into the more positive mindset is, I think, starts with just surrounding yourself with positive mindset individuals. Right. Because I think whatever it is, we're the average of the 5 people that we hang out with, or, whatever that is. Right. But I mean, that translates directly to mindset. And it's when you're walking around hanging out with, glass half empty people versus glass half full, then that's just naturally the mindset that you're going to be molded into. Mm-hmm. And I guess I say that simply because I think it's like an easy hack to more quickly get to a positive and, successful mindset is just start hanging out with people who are positive and successful. And then all of a sudden you're going to become positive and successful, at least from a mindset perspective, right? Yeah, that would delve. Then of course,
this is such an valuable and important concept. And because, as we're, growing up and we're in public school or school, we're hanging out and finding different friends, you're going to interact with people that, are like crab apples or really negative. So you do have to, at some point, choose this. Otherwise, it will be chosen for you who you're hanging out with.
100%.
Don't want. And I also think I want to just kind of add one thing is, as you are intentionally choosing these people to hang out with that are successful, positive, happy, uplifting, as opposed to putting your ideas down, as you're choosing to hang out with these people, do not poo-poo any of their ideas. Go into these relationships and friendships as sort of like, these are your mentors, these are your teachers. How can I, add value and support them and make them feel 100%. Good?
Yeah, 100%. Everybody's got something to bring to the table, right? Even if you don't know it. And I think just hanging out with just positive, positive mindset people will just help everybody kind of get launched into being, positive, generally speaking.
I agree. 1,000%. I love it. Anything else you want to add to that? Sort of like success mindset?
I think that's a lot of it. And maybe the other thing is also, I don't think any human being can have perfectly positive mindset 24 hours a day, every single minute and every single second of every single day of every day of the year, every year of their life, right? So there are times where things are going to be hard. There are times where that positive mindset kind of, turns to a more negative mindset, or you're just in a rut or whatever it may be, but to not let those impede you from, progress and going back to the positive mindset, right? And being aware enough to just say, yeah, I'm having a crappy day. You know what? And it is what it is, but later today or tomorrow, it'll be better, right? And then you go back to the positive mindset. And I think that's another one, because we can easily get stuck in the, oh, crap, it's a rough week. My 2 kids are sick. I didn't sleep last night. So I'm going to have a terrible day and I'm not going to do anything today, right? Well, no, it's going to be hard for a few hours when I wake up. Sure. Let's move on, right?
Yeah, and I'll sometimes tell myself that at night, in the middle of the night, like not sleeping. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just not going to do anything tomorrow. I'm not doing anything tomorrow. And then, the thought will creep in. No, you'll wake up and you'll get into the day and all that. And then I'll just say, I'm not doing anything tomorrow. But then after you spend a couple hours like waking up, and then you're ready to go, But I also wanted to kind of touch on what you were saying, where if you're having I think just even being aware that we can have this positive, successful mindset where we believe in ourselves, we believe in our dreams, we know that we can accomplish them, even if we don't know how. And when we get off track, labeling, I have a crappy attitude, labeling, I'm angry, and that's okay. We don't stuff it, right? And the goal is to not let this last days, weeks, months, and years, so we turn into Ebenezer Scrooge, but the shorter we can turn around, the better, and so I love that.
100%.
Awesome. Yeah. And one of the things that I've learned is to flip that on its head. Exercise is great. Meditation is great. Mm-hmm. Talking to my wife helps me if I'm frustrated or something. I'm hanging out with the dogs or going for a walk. It's actually, if you really want to turn your attitude around, it can be hard and frustrating, but it's doable all the time.
Yeah, just changing your context. If you're frustrated, having a crappy day in this context, change that context. Go outside. Like you said, if you're stuck in front of the computer and frustrated with work or whatever, go out for a walk. That works all the time. Or if you're frustrated with your kids or whatever and having a bad day with the kids, go spend some time with your wife. Change that context so that, you get to kind of a happy place, right? So.
I love that. Yeah, don't sit in front of your computer until you get so angry you punch a hole in the screen or toss it out the window.
That'd be an expensive hole, yeah.
Yeah. It would be nice, too, just to ninja punch a hole through your screen. Not going to probably happen. But
I'd break my hand, I think.
Yeah, me too. Okay, great. Now, this is sort of along the same lines. If there was a key that unlocked or helped to unlock success in your life, what would you say that is?
I think I've already said it, but for me, it really is, understanding and understanding the value of a good work ethic and hard work, right? And again, repeating myself, hard work does not mean grinding, killing yourself, working 20 hours a day, doing all this, fluffy stuff that brings you nowhere. But it really is focusing on the most important thing, taking that next step, focused next step to move the needle just a little bit for that thing, whatever it is at any point in time, but make sure you keep the most important thing, right? So yeah, just that valuing hard work, right? And basically, we get nothing for free, right? In this life, you got to go after it one way or another. And understanding that we're not entitled to, stuff, everything, right? It depends on who you talk to these days, right? But that sense of entitlement is pretty pervasive, at least in my environment. So just understanding that, you got to work to get what you want, right?
There ain't no free lunch, and if people are giving out, you always got to, I'm not saying that, Jason Drees always brings this up. If some super wealthy guy walks up to you and offers you $50,000, what are your thoughts, and are you willing to accept it? That might be an indicator in your relationship with money, but that aside, free gifts might sometimes have some strings attached that you don't want,
They often do, in my experience.
They often do.
Even if they're unsaid strings, right?
Yeah.
They're there somewhere.
And that's marketing, right? Like,
there you go. Right there. 100%.
You actually touched on something earlier. You said it basically. I just wanted to kind of also like follow up is like with hard work, what I'm hearing you say is like, okay, we have step back. We have this bigger vision, this bigger thing that we're working on. And I know that right now I can take this action on this activity. And then, tomorrow or the next one action next, I may not have to feel super awesome about it, but that's sometimes what hard work looks like is this has to be done. And even if I'm like in a good attitude or not. So then again, we can check our attitude.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Okay, 100%. Cool. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Do you mind sharing with us one book recommendation or many, and then one tech recommendation, which seems like something you'd enjoy?
Book recommendation. That's going to be a hard one because I'm looking at my library over there to my left, and there's so many. But I think right now, one book that has really helped me and helped kind of really start the day properly, get in the right mindset, make progress toward my goals and all of that, and just, kicking things off properly is Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And the whole savers, right? So, just scribing, reading, affirmations, meditating or mindfulness, right? Exercise, silence. I think I said all of them. I think savers is an acronym in this case. So, that's really, really, helped. It just really helps. And what I realized is I was doing all those savers, those things, meditating, exercising, reading, journaling, silence, whatever. I was doing those maybe not every day, but I was also doing them kind of, I'd read 5 minutes over here and then exercise later in the day and then, do other parts of like the whole savers kind of approach or framework, whatever you want to call it, spread out through the day, but concentrating them at the beginning of the day, regardless of what time you wake up, because the whole thing with Miracle Morning, for those who know that it's all about, I'm going to start at 5 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. Sure, if you can, great. But even just regardless of the time, starting with getting those things done just starts the day off well from a mindset perspective. You're, exercised, ready to go. You've already accomplished 5 or 6 things before you even, had a cup of coffee or had breakfast or started your work day. And that just makes everything else, at least for me, right, the rest of the day just super, positive, feels like everything's just flowing, that I'm making progress, that things are moving. So that's really helped me. And then related to that, one application or one piece of technology that I really started using more and more that I've enjoyed a whole lot. And obviously I'm not affiliated and when I say this, but it's the app called Strides. And it's available, I think, Android, iOS, iPads, desktop, all of that, so web or whatever. But it's basically a goal setting and goal tracking app with a whole bunch of, different features. So you can set all these different types of goals, different reminders, depending on what you want to do and when. And basically, because when looking at my life in general, and this is everything from, exercise to practicing, golf to reading to respond or meeting new people to meditating to, calling my father, whatever it is, I have all of those in there with whatever cadence I want to, apply those goals to. And that just helps me a lot, right? So it helps me keep on track. And every day, it'll send you text messages when it's time to go exercise, and you can customize the language. So I have very colorful language when it comes to
get your butt out there.
That's the polite version of it. Yeah. So that's been very helpful because then I just tracking, I'm reminded to, it's kind of an accountability tool as well, where I'm reminded to achieve the goals for that day that are captured in there. And then I can also, I'll review them on a regular basis, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever, to see where I'm making progress and where I'm not making progress. So those are things that I've really been, using a lot lately.
That's a super cool app. It sounds like. How many goals can you have in there?
I don't know, because I think they have a free version and a paid version. I've paid for it. It does not break the bank. I couldn't tell you how much it is, but it's not crazy. And I don't know. If I'm looking at it now, I have 30 for today.
Okay.
So that's just today.
Wow.
And then it'll vary on the day, right? So there's a lot. It's very, very flexible.
That's really cool. Sounds helpful. I have like a recording of 101 goals that I wrote in 2021, and I try to listen to it frequently, but it's not enough. But if I just sort of apply some of these or all of them to that app, it sounds like at least, okay, because here's kind of my thought. Worst case scenario, if you're not taking action on these, but you're visually seeing this is a goal that I have, hopefully take action.
So that helps for sure. But I think you said it, or you hit the nail on the head. I think that's worst case. What I've done is if I have a yearly goal or whatever, is I'll spend the time at the beginning of the year or the beginning of each, quarter or month or whatever, however you want to break it down, to say, hey, here, if this is my goal, what meaningful sub goals, smaller goals, steps, whatever you want to call it, can I take this week to move me towards that? Right. And that's what ends up in this app for me. And that's how I know and see that I'm making progress.
That's cool. It's awesome. And the Morning Miracle book is awesome also. And I think I need to go back and read it. But yeah, I think one of the other things that happens if so if you do the Morning Miracle, like you were talking about, it's self-care, right? And then your
100%.
Your body gets a hit of dopamine or whatever, endorphins, all that fun stuff from the workout. But you also, your self-esteem gets a hit because you have these things that you said you were going to do and then you did it. And so, might as well unlock your potential early on in the day and, get into the right space. So I really love that.
Yeah, for sure.
And let me ask this, how can our audience support you? Is there a particular type of deal that you're looking for that they can send your way or any support?
Well, I guess there's two answers to that. So first of all, how the audience can support is really, another great book, Give and Take by, is it Adam Grant? I think so. It's just a philosophy and mindset that I subscribe to, just being a giver versus a taker. And I say that just because we really like to help people who feel stuck maybe in getting started in their real estate investing journey. So, come contact us, chat with us. Be happy to help. For more. Undoor.com? Yeah, Undoor.com. And even better, if you want to get all the contact forms, schedule a call, social media links or whatever, it's Undoor.com/links. That's the best way to get a hold of us. And then otherwise, whoever has single family, properties in St. Louis, Missouri, and wants to get rid of them, that's what we'd be interested in. So that's what we focus on primarily: buy and hold single families in St. Louis, Missouri.
I love it. That's cool. I really want to pick your brain more about that. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
And I'll put the link to your website in the show notes. Now,
I appreciate that.
I also wanted to just take a moment here and share with the audience that Nathan has been behind the scenes on the Gentle Art of Crushing It for a few months now, doing a lot of work, helping us to build this into a much more like a presence social media, helping us technology-wise, helping us to move the needle forward and make it, just a much more professional and awesome podcast. And so right along with that, Nathan is also joining us as one of our new hosts. So I'm super, super happy and proud to welcome you as one of the hosts here.
I appreciate that, Doug. Thank you. I'm very, very excited to get this off the ground and get started. We already have a few interviews lined up, so we're going to get into the groove here and looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to that as well, and listening and watching you grow and staying in touch with you. I think my goal is always to build lifelong friendships, and I think that there's a bright future ahead for all of us. Anybody that's willing to.
I would agree,
that, but especially you.
I would agree. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Doug. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It. And really appreciate your time. And without any further ado, I will sign us off. So Thank you very much, audience, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. And thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.